Welcome back to Stellar Horizons campaign game playthrough episode 32. We are going to be starting off in the year 2115 with the build phase. First, I was just going to kind of float an idea that I've been sitting with. I like the trade mechanism in this game. It's the ability to buy and sell resources with these trade markers. I think adds an interesting economic element to it. I think my one caveat there is the fact that you can deny other players access to your trade markers. And I think a good way, I guess I'm just floating an idea here. We have this large foreign relations track that is alliance, collaboration. This one's even called free trade, neutral, embargo, war. I think it would add an interesting tension, although this is called free trade, perhaps maybe not at the free trade level, but certainly at the collaboration and alliance level. If you have that relationship with somebody, perhaps you might not be able, I'm suggesting a rule or a variant here, where you wouldn't be able to deny somebody the ability to come and trade at your base. So adds an economic tension. It creates if somebody doesn't want somebody to come trade at their base, they would want to push the relations down a little bit and keep it in that neutral zone, which also adds to attention. Which way are people trying to shift the foreign relation? Do they want to push it down into the embargo war? If you push it up into the collaboration alliance area, then you're risking economic, kind of an open trade policy, because as it stands right now, everybody, it is, and I think somebody kind of commented on this on the Geek, you can sit there with your trade marker for the entire decade until it's most advantageous for you to use it, and there's no pressure from other players, but if there is kind of a true sort of open trade system, free trade policies, then the civilian population on the base is not going to really care who provides those resources to them. And if you have sort of a diplomatic relationship with them at the high end, then somebody else should be able to just come in there and snipe that from you without, they'd still probably need to pay the 1 billion tariff, and I don't know if there's an adjustment there that should be made. Probably not, because the trade limits are still, I'm not suggesting necessarily you're still limited to 6 or 4 resources, but to have the pressure from other players who could come in and take advantage of the trade markers, I think would be a benefit. So that's just a thought. If anybody wants to comment on that, they're welcome to do so. Anyway, I'm not going to make any changes. That's just an observation from where we're at. So let's go to the builds. The Russians, they've got 16 billion. But they are not going to build anything. They've got some robotic explorers, but they are still 4 over their support limit right now for robotic explorers, so they cannot build any more. And so I'm not sure. I said I was going to spend some time thinking about what the bases are doing, and I didn't do that, so maybe I will here before the next turn. Anyway, the Russians aren't building anything. The Asians can go one more. This is their last. They've got all their robotic explorers now built. They're going to buy a flyby and a probe. And the Americans are also, right now they're 3 over their total limit, so they've got 6 robotic explorers, and they're going to go ahead and expend 3 billion more and put up the telescope. They're going to be using an LV4. It's overkill, but they're going to risk that. And so that is the builds. And let's check the bases. We don't have any ships that are at a base to be serviced this turn. So, transfer box movement. Jupiter, American flyby with a probe, Russian CV5. Americans, first persons to Saturn. A couple of flybys at Uranus, a couple more at Neptune. So that's it. Russian movement. Let's come in here. Well, the Russian CV3 has done everything that's other than it could move away and stay here. It could move away from the base, remain at Mercury, and remotely mine. I don't think the Russians necessarily need to do that. Certainly not ore. That's a 6, that's a 7. If they wanted more fuel, I could go to Venus. That ship can earn them 2 more, or it's got cargo for 2 more, so it's useful. Well, the Russians do not have a lot of fuel. What did we say? Well, fuel here is not very interesting. So let's go grab some fuel at Venus. It's pretty much a sure thing, 90% chance to get 2 fuel. Okay, what other Russian stuff? Well, they got the CV6 here at Mars. That's a good exploration vehicle. It cannot, I was going to say, it can't go to Saturn yet because there's not and that's a CV6. So a CV6 to go to Saturn is going to require a large supply station. And here's where I am thinking I need to change up the build phase. So the Russians have this Teslina base. They've got money, they've got LV4s. What they need are resources. And I think they would go ahead and spend some of that money and launch some resources out here. So right now they need 2 ore and 2 fuel. Let's just go ahead and send them that. So we're going to change this up a little bit. Give them $1 change, 2 fuel and 2 ore. And they're going to launch. Do they want to go more than that? No, they'll stick right there because they do have 1 ore and 2 fuel out here as well. So they're in the process of accumulating a little more. This is just going to help tide them, make them a little more efficient. So anyway, CV6, good explorer, but it can't go to Saturn yet. So it's going to head to Jupiter. And Jupiter's distance from here, that's a 1, so 4. So that's a 2-year journey. Nothing else Russian there. This guy's going to stay, this guy's going to stay. The CV5 has nothing to do in Jupiter right now. So I think we'll just park it at Jupiter, or maybe we can park it at the base. But now the one that does have, I'm sorry, yeah, I said they were mining ore. That ore is actually an Asian. This Russian CV4 is going to come over here and try to do the same thing. And that one remains. Russian flyby, Russian flyby. So all we have is the launch from Earth of resources out to Jupiter. 60 something. It's cocked, but doesn't matter. So that's a successful launch. Rocket is recovered, and these resources, they fly out to Jupiter. I'm pointing like that, and we can just move that over to the Teslina base. So that is all of the Russians' movements. Next up, the Asians. So they have an orbiter, which is heading, just needs to do an engine check. 74, no problem, and it's going to come over here and be at the sun observation spot. Telescope. Of course, these CVs need to move. And this CV was coming in with a bunch of supplies to the Asian base. So those are going, and that base is, so there is 6 supplies. And here's another place where I think we are going to do a quick adjustment on our builds. So the Asians are going to go ahead and risk another 4 supplies. They'll pay for it. 4 supplies on Earth. And launch them on an LV-4. Let's go ahead and take care of that right now. 19, so that costs them the launch vehicle. That's the problem with that. But the supplies do make it. But pretty much the profit that they were making off that was negated by the launch vehicle. So it ended up, and they probably lost $1. Let's do, and we did on LV-4, so I was planning on using that for the flyby, so now we're down to an LV-2. They'll go ahead and shell out the $5 billion. So again, should have built it ahead of time, but I wasn't paying attention here. So that's an LV-4 that they can use to launch that flyby, and they will send it, they're just going to send it straight to Saturn. And that's a 60, so the launch vehicle is retained, and the probe and the flyby go to Saturn in the 1 box. Okay, let's figure out, what are they doing with these crewed vehicles? Well, one's a great cargo hauler, and the other one is an explorer. The explorer is definitely heading to Jupiter. But the cargo hauler would be useful. We're halfway through the decade. I think what they're going to do is send it to Earth. So if they send it to Earth, that's a 1-year trip. They don't have to land on Earth, so they can load it up with the cargo, 8 cargo. They don't have to risk a launch vehicle or anything like that, and they can just buy resources. It can't remotely mine, so it can't like go to Venus and take advantage of the good fuel situation there. But they can turn some of this cash into, and maybe they should have done that with the supplies instead of what they just did, and waited a couple more turns. That would have been a better shot, but they didn't take that option. Okay, so that's all the Asian stuff down here. They have Crude Vehicle 4, of course it cannot. Are they going to be able to, at this base, no, it can service CV2s. Next turn it can service CV3s, so it's 2 turns away. But sending it back to Tara base doesn't really help either. So they're getting low on all kinds of resources. So, so they're going to have to launch resources somewhere. And they don't even have enough resources this turn. So I apologize, I didn't do enough kind of planning, and so we're going to go ahead and give them another adjustment. They're going to spend $2 billion more. To send an ore and a excuse me, an ore and a fuel, launch it on an LV2 to Jupiter, kind of like the Russians, going ahead and supplementing the buildup of this Russian, or the Jupiter base. And then this CV has fuel. It's going to go there. Send stuff back to the asteroid belt, or send stuff to the asteroid belt to ready the crude vehicle. By the time we did that, that's a couple of years. I think we'll be in about the same situation, because like I said, this is just a CV4, so it takes 2 years either way. What's next for the Asians? Nothing. Americans. So the Americans have a crude vehicle 3 with fuel there at Mars, and I was trying to debate, what do the Americans want to do with that crude vehicle 3. I was thinking about actually loading up this. Remember, the Americans have double their cargo capacity, so it could carry 8, so it could carry 6 supplies, and I was thinking about just bringing that stuff back to Earth, and they could use it to supplement the construction, you know, like CV6s or an 8 or something like that with the supplies. The robotic explorers don't ever cost supplies, but the CVs do. Instead, what I'm thinking, instead of hauling this, let's go ahead and leave it here at Mars. We're going to send this back to Earth. It's going to get ore and take it out to Mars, and Mars can build some settlements. So I think that's worth doing. What else for the Americans? They've got, okay, so the crude vehicle 4 here is going to stay. I'm going to skip Jupiter for a second. Both of these guys are heading to Titan, sorry. Dropping my G's. So they're trying to accomplish this mission. So there's a CV4 over here. Well, the Americans have, and that's Prosperity base, right? Yep. So they've got a lot of, they've already got the small spaceport. They could build a large one. They'd probably like to start, you know, really building this base up. So I think this CV4, they're going to get a lot of fuel, but supplies would be something that's relatively easy to come by if they come over here, and they can mine that at Europa. They're going to get an asteroid, and these guys are going to explore. Of course, this guy's staying here just to get the asteroid, and I think that's all of the Americans' movement except for the launch of their telescope. So, overdoing it with an LV-4, and that cost them 14. So the launch vehicle is out, but the telescope goes into Earth orbit, and that looks like all of our movement. So explorations, well, we'll start off with the American telescope, and as we discovered, Kuiper belt is pretty nice. Plus there's a 10% chance of life, which is worth, a victory point, political point, and a couple of biology texts. And I don't see, there's no better option. So 6 halved to 3, the American telescope is a 2 plus 2, so 4, and 3 is a 7. They got the 7 and a 60, so that's a successful physics. But they just got a 1, no depletion. Next up for the Americans, exploration-wise. Well, flyby and probe, they're still trying to hit this Jupiter, so that's an 11, 12, plus 6, 18. And there's no malfunction roll, just they got a 7, so they do get to pull 2 physics markers. They got a 1 and a 1. So again, not the depletion that they are looking for. Engine check for the flyby, a 90. And the flyby moves on out here. No other exploration in the Jupiter system, but we have 2 CV5s, so they're the same. They're both 9s. Printed plus 1 is 10, so it's an automatic success. So we'll do the Enterprise, and then we'll do, still need to, I'll just do them one at a time, because, okay, 77. So Titan is a biology. Enterprise gets a 2 biology, and the next one, 64, again no recall, and just a 1. So again, no depletion, and they do not complete the mission. So they got unlucky there. And there's only a couple of biology chits left, so it may be that there's not even any successes. I don't look at that, so. That guy's going to mine. What other? They've got rovers, so let's do the rovers. Rover is a 6 plus 3, 9. And that's a 9 and a 96. So a success at Hyperion. Hyperion is engineering. Just a 1. Next rover, 7 plus 7 is 14. I got a 5, so just a single biology marker, and a 45. And the biology is a 1. Next up, this orbiter. Well, the Americans are thinking, okay, there's one biology chit, we don't know what it is, but it's either, so they could target Mimas, try to get another biology, which would then refresh the cup, the biology markers for everybody, and they would be risking. So maybe they'll skip going after the targeting Mimas in the biology, and instead I think they're going to go for engineering. Or they can go for the physics. Maybe they'll try the physics. Yeah. So they'd like to get Saturn, a world card for Saturn. They're curious. So that's only a 50% chance of success, though, but they'll go for it. And they did it. 98 and a 4, so at least they get the pull. No guarantees on the depletion, of course. And it's just a 1. And I think that's all the American explorations here. They've got an orbiter at Uranus, so a 3. And they would like some more physics. So they're going to go for this one. So what did we say? 3 plus 4, 7 minus 1, down to a 6. Well, they continue to get lucky. 6 and a 27. So that was physics for Eclo, and the marker is a 3. So that's a depletion here. The 4, nope, and here, so 3. 4 is going to a 3, and the Americans have earned another political marker. 3. That orbiter does not have a spectrometer, so just one world card. And it's going to be chasms. So let's see here. Do we want chasms or the escarpments? It's worse on ore, it's better on supplies, same on fuel. I think the Americans are going to keep it as escarpments. It gives a better crude exploration bonus, and they're probably the ones who will first be able to come out here, and keeping the ore higher. Not a huge benefit, but they're going to stick with that. And then there's a life check, 4%. $15, no life. Close. Flyby, this is good ones. That's a 5. And they're going to go for Neptune. That's a sure thing. What else is Triton? But they're curious to get a world card over here, maybe. So they'll go for the, yeah, it's an automatic 10. And just the malfunction. No malfunction, 79. Engine check for the flyby. It's a 10, that's okay. Neptune is physics. And it's a 2. Flyby. Let's see here, yeah, it's just a 1-year journey. I think the next one is a 2-year journey. But that looks like all of the exploration for the Americans. So next up, the Asians. So we'll come in here to the inner system. That orbiter is a 3 and a 5 for this sun observation. 8. They not successful with a 10, but 52, no malfunction. Telescope is a 3. Kuiper belt is a 6. Halved, so a 6 overall for the telescope. A success and a 26. That's physics. And the physics marker is a 2. After that, no explorations, none out here in Jupiter. So they've got rover, orbiter, and a flyby in the one box. They are going to start off with the rover. There's still one biology marker. So the rover is a 6. No spectrometer. 6 plus 1 is a 7. They got an 8 and an 85. No malfunction either, but no success. The orbiter will go ahead and go for it as well. So a 5. He gets the spectrometer bonus. 5 plus 3 is 8, and then minus 1. Back down to 7. A success. 47. No malfunction. So the last biology marker is a 2. No depletion. And I think the Asians are still interested in trying to, even with this flyby, let's see here, it would be a 3, plus 1 is 4, minus 1 down to 3. I guess the best would be, what, 3 plus 4 is 7. I guess they're gonna go for the engineering. So we said 7, and then it's minus 1 because they're a year out. So a 6, and that's a success, no malfunction. Engineering marker pull. Is a 1. So that's the Asians stuff there. Actually, it looks like, well, the Russian orbiter can go for Titan as well. I was just going to say, it looks like the Americans have lucked out, but there is the Russian orbiter. Okay, here. We're still doing Asians. Flyby. It's a 4. And they will go for more engineering. So 4 plus 5 is 9. They'll pick Oberon. That's a success. 98, no malfunction. Let's go ahead and do the engine. That's a 100, no problem. And we said Oberon, engineering. That's a 2. Flyby moves on. And that is all of the Asians stuff. So come back to the beginning. Russian orbiter is a 2 and 5, 7. They got 7, they got a 68, so they are getting physics. For the sun, which is a 1. Next up for the Russians. Nothing out here. So the Russians have an orbiter and a rover. That's it. Rover is a 5 plus 7, 12. No malfunction. They got a 13, so a single biology marker. Well, they are, I'm going to pause here and add up the biology chits and return them to the cup. Okay, I'm pulling the biology marker. The totals there were 31 for the Asians, 24 for Americans, 17 for the Russians. And the Russians are getting their biology marker, which is a 2. So they've done that, and now the Russians are going to do the orbiter at Titan. So it's a 3 plus 3 is 6 minus 1, 5. No success. So the Americans will have another opportunity next turn to get the Titan mission. We did those. You know, it's all the Russians there. Russian flyby here. It's a 4. They'd really like more engineering. So 4 and 5 is 9. 2 and a 26, so that's a success. I think the Russians' failure rate is 21. Yeah. So we said that's a success. That is engineering. And that's a 2. Engine check roll for that flyby. 24. Flyby moves on. Next Russian flyby. Triton is physics. Physics. Well, they're just more interested in getting. Oh, and I forgot about maybe the Americans would have done something different, but because that's a +2 there. So that's a 3. 3 plus 8, 11. I think they'll go for the sure thing. '53, the 5, so they just get a single physics marker, which is a 1, and there's one more physics marker in the cup. Engine check for the flyby. Good to go at 13. The American on top. Doesn't matter. And that's all of our exploration. So next up. Remote mining. There's nothing down here, but it's good to check. Nothing out here. So the remote mining that's going on, let's see here. Anything with the Americans? Yes, they're doing supplies, so that's a 9 at Europa, and they got a 24. And what did we say their recall rate is? 20. Just checking. 20. So no recall, and a 7, so they get 2 supplies. At Europa. That's the only one at American here. Of course, they're going to do the asteroid, and that's going to earn them a victory point. And I always forget, yes or no on the political point. We'll have to check. Anyway, recall check, 38 good. They got a 2. And when we look at the asteroid harvest chart, a 2 is 4 supplies. So 4 supplies. Asteroid goes away. I know it earns a victory point, but give me a second and I'll see if it gets them a political marker. Okay, so the asteroid mining is just a victory point, not a political marker. I guess to earn a political marker, well, biology earns it. I was going to say, what's a good rule of thumb if there's, another faction involved, but life is, so I guess the discovery of life is important enough to be politically significant as well. That's all of the Americans' remote mining. Next up would be the Asians. That one is flipped, but this crewed vehicle can do ore here at EO, so that's a 5. That's a 2 and a 16. So that's another recall. They do get 2 ore, but the crude vehicle is going to flip. And it will earn them a biology marker. Which is just a 1. Okay. Russians. Not doing anything down here. Checking, but they do have this crude vehicle and that crude vehicle. Let's do the fuel at Jupiter first. So it's an 11, so they're guaranteed the 2. I got an 8. Minus 1 is 7, but still just 2, 95. So 2 more fuel. Over here. Of course, I picked up an ore. And now the crude vehicle getting ore. Again, 5 is the target number. The Russians get to subtract 1, but they didn't need it. They got the 1 and a 50, so they get 3 ore. So the Russians are having a little bit better luck with the Jupiter mining than the Asians did. And what's next? Well, that's all the remote mining. So trade and base construction. Well, trade. The Asians will go ahead and execute the trade at Mars. They can sell tin supplies. They have tin supplies, so they are going to sell tin supplies for 20 billion. Again, they're already at 25, 35, 45, $49 billion halfway through the decade. And they are still going to sell a bunch of ore at the asteroid belt at some point. The Russians are not selling any supplies there. They don't have any supplies there. I guess they need to do something about that. I think they do have a crude. No, the Russians don't. Oh, they have one there. Okay. Should they have? We're going to go ahead and just stick with what they're doing. They'll probably go, after they mine once at Venus, they can go to Earth and go to Mars. I think they can get all of that done within the decade. So that's all the trading that's going to happen. Base construction, though. Now the Americans are still going to stand pat on most of this. The question is, you know what, they're just going to go ahead and spend the 4 ore and the 4 fuel. And go to the large spaceport. Russians. Okay, Russians are spending 2 fuel and 2 ore to go to the large supply station. This is the asteroid belt base. Got a lot of resources here. What are they doing? Still no decision. They're They're going to hold off. And the Asians, they're going to spend 2 ore and 2 fuel. And go to a large supply station as well. And nothing else right now. So that looks like all of our builds. I'll be back in a minute with 2116 build phase. Okay, build phase. Pretty simple. And I did a little more consideration this turn. So what's going on here? Well, Russia and Asia are trying to get to the small spaceport out here at Europa. So the Russians are not going to build anything. They don't need to. They've got 2 crewed vehicles, ore, and fuel that can head back to their base this turn, and that will provide them the resources they need to build a small spaceport. I'm going to go ahead and unload this into the Asians box. The Asians, on the other hand, you can see they just have 2 fuel. They're going to bring 3 ore, so they're going to be a fuel short. They're going to do, so that'll be the fuel, so they're buying some resources on Earth. Then they're going to send 2 fuel and 2 supplies so that they can ready those crewed vehicles once the small spaceport's up and running. And since they have a capacity with their launch vehicles of 6, they're going to go ahead and supplement it with 1 more ore, because that's the hardest thing for them to get out here. So that's their, they'll launch that on a couple of launch vehicles. Americans not building anything. They're getting low on cash. They've got a crewed vehicle coming though, and they're going to use some of that to buy some ore and take it back to Mars. And they're saving $3 billion so that they can buy some supplies out at the Freedom Base, just because it's a good deal. So that's the builds. Transfer box movement, Russian CV to Venus. These guys arrive at Earth. Got a CV4 here. I think the thing to do with the CV4, let's double check. Phobos and Deimos base is Asha. Asha base is empty, so nothing to pick up here. The other thing I was thinking with the Americans was with that crewed vehicle 3 was picking up this fuel from the moon, and maybe they'll go ahead and do that as well. And then so that they can get rid of this. I mean, they can get rid of the base anyway, but pick up the fuel so it doesn't go to waste. Anyway, we were doing transfer box movement. These guys are in the 1 box. That guy was already sitting in the flyby box, and so now flyby with a probe and a flyby. This is just transfer box movement. Don't get sidetracked. So that's all the transfer box movement. All right, first up for movement, the Russians. The Russians are going to go land on Venus. It's crewed vehicle 3, so it can do that. Any Russian movement over there? No. Not this turn, but next turn, the Russian CV5 can come out here and do some exploration. But crewed vehicle 4 and another crewed vehicle 4 are moving to the base and unloading. So that looks like all of Jupiter, Saturn. Sorry, I think that glare. Let me see if I can fix that. No, can't do much about the glare. I apologize. I checked out a video, how to improve your video quality and things like that for YouTube stuff, and they're like, lighting's really important. It's like, well, sorry. Let's see here, any other Russian movements there? No. So that looks like all of the Russian movement. Next up, Asians. Let's go ahead and take care of their launch vehicles. I guess what's most important? Well, the fuel. We'll just we'll call it that way. So LV4 and then the LV2. Successful launch, rockets recovered. LV2. Successful launch, rocket is recovered. So all these resources are out to Jupiter. Okay, other Asian movement. Let's see here. They've got a CV6, and I think it just was moving into Earth orbit and to take advantage of the space elevator. CV4. That's a 2-year trip out to Jupiter. And they'll go ahead and do that. I think, apologize, let's see, we're actually in, I didn't advance this. There's actually, by the time it gets to Jupiter, it'll be the end of the decade, pretty much. And then they won't have any crewed vehicles. I'm thinking, does it make more sense? The answer is probably, but not for sure. So it's a 1-year trip in this direction. Next up, this crewed vehicle is moving over to the base and unloading that ore. And that looks like all of the Asians' movements. Okay, Americans. Yeah, the Americans are going to go ahead and head out to the Independence base to load up. I'm just going to go ahead and do it so I can remember what's going on. The American here is going to stay in mines for some more supplies. CV5s are going to stay. This guy, if he wanted to mine more supplies, he could do that. There's not really any great resource spots though out here at Saturn. 5 for ore, 4 or 3 for supplies, 5 for ore, 1 for supplies, 4 for ore, 4 for fuel. So actually none of these, this is not right now the place to go. So instead they're going to move over here and take advantage of the +3 crewed exploration bonus. That looks like all of the Americans' movements. Okay, so we're on to exploration. American telescope, it's a 4, +3 for the Kuiper belt, 7. An 8, so that's a miss, 27, no malfunction. Next up for the Americans in exploration, of course there's nothing at Jupiter. They're going to do their 2 CV5s. Let's get this one. So we said 9 + 1, 10. Automatics. We're just rolling for recalls. So the first one, 29, no recall. And the biology marker pull. a 1. Next one, recall roll 31. And the biology marker is a 2. So the Americans, still no luck with that. And it has to be a crewed vehicle, so the orbiter, the flyby, that's not going to help them. Let's go ahead and do their last crewed vehicle while we're on them. That's a 6 plus 7, so 13. $87 and a 5, so a single engineering marker. And it's a 2. Man, the Americans have tons of stuff here. Gosh, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 explorations that they're going to do this turn in the Saturn system. All right, rover is a 6 plus 3, 9. It's a success and a 33. That's engineering at Hyperion. And it's a 2. Next rover is 7 plus 7, 14. Biology. I might have missed that. I feel like I'm not sure last time. Anyway, 26 and 5. Maybe I didn't. It's just the single biology marker. And it's a 1. Right now they're just pulling low ones, which just increases the odds that somebody else can pull a high. So they don't want to keep on going after biology. I don't think. I don't know. So instead, orbiter is a 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. I guess I should pick this one. 4 plus 4 is 8, minus 1 is 7. It's a 9 and a 69. No success, no malfunction. And the flyby is 4. And they'll do that one again. Dion Rhea. So that's an 8. $20 on the, but their malfunction is, I think, 18. Just checking. Yeah, 18 for robotic explorer. So they're okay, but they got a 9, so no success. Engine check for the flyby, 46. That's fine. So that flyby moves on. And that's all of the Americans' explorations in the Saturn system. They've got an orbiter here. They're going to go for Oberon again, so that's a 3 plus 5 is 8, minus 1, 7. A 2 and a 6. So successful engineering exploration and then a robotic failure, which will be in another engineering marker. The first one's a 2, no depletion. The next one is a 2. So they've got that, and this orbiter is out. I think everybody had like a bad year a couple of years back, maybe 3 years back. I feel like the last video, and so far this one, we haven't had any robotic explorer failures. Next up for the Americans is this flyby, the Kuiper belt. It's a 5 they're going to target Pluto. So that's an 11. Oh wait, no, it's just +2 for orbiter, +2 for orbiter, yeah. Let's target Pluto. So 5 + 6 is 11. All right, had a technical glitch there and there was a recording stop. I hope I didn't miss anything. I think it saved out everything. Anyway, we were just about to do the flyby at Pluto at 11. And 86 and an 8, so a single physics marker. And this is the last physics marker in the cup, and it's a 1. And then we're going to roll for the engine check on the flyby. 51. And that is a double checking, but distance of 3, yeah, it's a 2-year journey. Okay. That is all of the Americans' explorations. Next up, the Asians. So we'll probably have to pause here as soon as we get a success. That's a 3 for the orbiter, 5, 8. The sun, yeah, 80 and a 1. So I'm going to pause and total the physics markers and put them back in the cup. Okay, that was the physics. Let's see here. The numbers were in the lead, America 32, Asia 30, Russia 10. And the Asian pole for over here at Mercury is a 1. Next up for the Asians, their telescope, they'll target the Kuiper belt, so that's a 3, that's a 3. I've done this before. 12 and a 4, so it's a success in physics, and then the telescope fails. It's a 1 for physics, engineering, 2. Asian telescope comes off. There's nothing there, nothing there. Got a rover, a flyby, and an orbiter. So rover first. Rover's a 6, plus 1 is 7. Success, 68. Biology marker for Titan, trying to steal a depletion and deny the Americans a mission, but that's not going to do it. It's a 1. But they'll go for the orbiter, so a 3 plus 3 minus 1, 5. $70 and a 7, so no success, no malfunction. Flyby, they do have a probe. Sure, why not? Probe is an 11, plus 1 is 12, so guaranteed. Four, so just a single biology marker pull, and we'll go ahead and roll for the flyby engine check. 83. So the biology marker pull for that probe, a 2. And the flyby moves on. So that's all of the Asians stuff. It's down to the Russians to try to deny the Americans. Asian flyby here, 4. I'll go for Triton. So 4 plus 8, 12. And a 4, and we said it was a 12, so it's a single physics marker, a 1, and engine check for the flyby, 93, and then I just did the Russian. Okay. That looks like all of the Asians' explorations. Russians, 2 plus 5 is 7 at the sun. A 9 is a robotic malfunction and a 9, so they're just getting an engineering marker, which is a 2, and the Russian orbiter is out. Nothing, so I think all we said here, they've got that rover, but they're going to use this orbiter at Titan, so that's 2, 3, okay, so it's a 3 plus 3, 6 minus 1, 5. A success and a 23. And their malfunction's 21, so they're getting a biology marker. And the marker is a 1. Americans keep getting lucky. Rover. It's 5 plus 7, 12. $45 and a 3, so just a single biology. And it's a 2. So that's all of the Russian stuff here. This American. Okay, so we got 2 Russian flybys left. Ooh. No, I was going to say, I just noticed that there was something out at the scattered disk. I was like, have I been forgetting that all along? But no, we just did that. Okay, Russian flyby here at Neptune is a 4 plus 8, 12. Going for Triton, 38 and a 9, so a single physics marker, which is a 2. Engine check for that flyby, 97, and this flyby is a 3, going for Pluto, 6, so 9. A 1 is a success, but a 16 is a malfunction. So physics for Pluto and then an engineering marker. 2 for the physics, engineering, also a 2. And so, there we go. I'm just going to adjust my mic here, I think. Might be a little better. May have been a little quieter than normal. Okay. That's all of the explorations. Remote mining. I don't think there is any, but there's. Okay, we've got a Russian one there. Yeah, I guess we have a few. Okay, so the Americans. Well, they're doing supplies here at Europa. Forgot about that. So that's a 9 for supplies. A 1 means 3 supplies, 88. 3 supplies, I'll just swap that out with a 5. And The Americans, no, they did exploration out here, so that was their only one. Next up, the Asians. Do the Asians have any? I don't think they have anything going on in the inner system. I'm just checking. No. Those guys are recalled, so there's nothing for the Asians this turn. Russians, fuel on Venus is a 9. Six and a 78, so that is 2, and actually it's a 6 minus 1, 5, but it's still just 2. Okay, Russian CVs are not. So that is all of the remote mining, and that's the end of the exploration phase. Next up, trade and base construction. No trades. Base construction, the answer is yes. So, get a couple of, so they're upgrading to a small spaceport. That's going to cost 3 fuel and 3 ore. And these guys, same thing, upgrading from a large supply to a small spaceport, 3 ore and 3 fuel. Giving them that remaining. Got some supply stations. And just straighten that up a little bit. And so that is the situation at the end of 2116. Let's just take a look. So lost a couple of robotic explorers this turn, maybe 2 or 3. And yeah, the Asians are going to buy some resources on Earth, use the space elevator, move it up to the crewed vehicle. I think the Americans are going to move in and do the same. Move some resources maybe out to Mars or the asteroid belt as is appropriate. I think this Asian crewed vehicle, the idea was to not go out to Jupiter and just arrive there at the end of the decade. They can mine some ore, supplies, not really, so they could mine some ore, hang out, and be ready to pick supplies up from Ceres after the next economic phase. Now at this point, next turn, both the Asians and the Russians will be able to send their crewed vehicles out to Saturn. At least it gives them something to do exploration-wise. I'm not sure if anybody's trying to build a base at Saturn. There certainly doesn't seem to be a good spot for it right now. So I think it's just a matter of, exploring, and the Americans are hitting it hard right now. So that's what that's what things look like. And of course, we've got a few flybys that have taken most of the decade to get out here. Okay, anyway, that's our video for today. Thanks for watching, and talk to you guys later.